The title Shiryou Sensen means Undead Battlefront, which I guess is why they chose their own English title, War of the Dead. It's the first PC Engine game from Fun Project, a Japanese game developer known for, let me check my notes, Shiryou Sensen and nothing else. Which isn't to say they didn't make anything else, it's just that everything else is much more obscure. Fun Project developed the original Shiryou Sensen, which was for MSX computers. That game was pretty well regarded, especially for the first release from a new studio, and that resulted in ports, which made significant changes to the game. And that's where the PC Engine version of Shiryou Sensen comes in. It echoes the MSX version, but it's not quite the same game. The plot is that the small American town of Chinese Hill has suddenly disconnected from the rest of the world. Anyone who goes in doesn't come out. Even a battalion of soldiers that were sent in vanished without a trace. Scientists studying the phenomenon from outside determined that the town was suffering an incursion of the dead. And so the US sent in the last resort, SWAT, a team of psychic commandos capable of dealing with mystical forces. They were also picked off one by one, until only the newest recruit, Lila Alphonse, was left. She happened to originally be from Chinese Hill, and now finds herself having to save anything that's left there. Shiryou Sensen is an action RPG where you take Lila through the surprisingly barren landscape of Chinese Hill. The game starts out with you next to a church, and that will act as your primary base as well as the place you go to save your progress. The way the game progresses is you'll go into the church, you'll talk to the people there, and someone will have heard of another survivor somewhere. And then you hike all over the very big, very empty map, pick up that person, take them all the way back to the church, possibly get an upgrade to your equipment from them, and then repeat. You can hit select when you're not in combat to bring up your inventory. Here you can choose your weapon, use any of the healing items that you've collected, and use your psychic abilities to charge one of your weapons. I found contradictory information on this, and the manual's information is perfunctory at best. The gist of it is that you have MF, or Mind Force. When you use MF to charge a weapon, it will do more damage in the next battle, but your current MF acts as your defense. What this all comes down to is you'll never want to actually use your Psi abilities except against a boss. Okay, I guess if you were hanging around outside the church and grinding for a while there, but that will turn out to be a really bad idea. Combat in Shiryou Sensen occurs randomly and plays out as a side-scrolling action game. Here, button 2 attacks and button 1 jumps, and if you're using a firearm, you'll find that it requires ammunition. Initially, it'll take 4 or 5 bullets to defeat one of the monsters. Defeating a monster will cause it to drop one of 4 things: a red orb that will heal you, a green orb that will give you back some of your psychic power, a blue orb that's for experience, and a briefcase that gives you 5 bullets. What drops in every encounter is fixed. So in the overworld, killing these little scuttling crab-like guys will always drop bullets. And killing this guy, when you encounter this particular group, will always drop experience. So you'll always have some idea of what you're going to get, and if you don't want to spend the resources, you can just run to the side of the screen and leave the area. Monsters that drop bullets tend to be very common in the overworld, but extremely rare in the dungeons. So you're going to have to walk around in the overworld for a while, grinding up bullets. Fortunately, as you level up, you'll be able to kill enemies faster. So by the time you're level 2 or 3, you'll probably be making a net profit when you're fighting these groups. An important thing to note about the combat is you can't access your inventory during it, so you can't switch weapons and you can't use healing items. You'll either have to finish off the enemies or run away if you want to do that. The overworld map in Shiryou Sensen is awfully barren. And on top of that, you're going to have to do locations in order. If you go into the wrong place, you'll encounter monsters that are way too strong for you, and you'll get destroyed in an instant. So you might have to pass by certain locations on your way to the correct one. And initially, before you have a boat to get around, you're going to have to take a very long, circuitous route around everything. It takes a long time to get anywhere. You save your progress by going to the church and talking to this coffin? Whatever, on the left-hand side of the cross. That's where you can get the passwords, which are 56 characters long. It's definitely one of the more absurd password lengths. Inside the package for Shiryou Sensen is this little pink slip of paper. It tells you that it's there for gameplay hints. What it's really there to do is warn you away from the bugs. There are 2 game-breaking bugs in Shiryou Sensen, and either of them could potentially make you have to restart or go back to a much earlier password. The first is that if you level up too much, and your experience exceeds 9999, then Lila just keels over dead. And there's easily enough experience in the game to reach that level. If you just fight normally and don't run away from battles, you would probably encounter this bug before you reach the end of the game. The other bug is even worse. Lila's inventory for consumable items has 14 slots. If she gets a 15th item, which is what the manual says her limit is, then her inventory overflows, and it can do anything to the rest of her inventory, including quest items. So if you're not using things as you find them, you're going to find the game to be unwinnable. There's one more tip on that pink sheet, though I think it's more of a general gameplay hint. The conversations that you have with people aren't necessarily the one line that you get when you first bump into them. You have to bump into them over and over again and make sure that you exhaust their conversation, and that's how you ensure that the game progresses. If you don't do that, you could find yourself wandering around China Hills forever. I know you'll be surprised to hear this, but Shiryou Sensen does not have a good reputation in Japan. The few people who know of it at all mainly point to it as an oddity on the PC Engine. My own take is, it's not that bad, but it's also not that good. The side view combat encounters work pretty well. The post-apocalyptic city setting couldn't be any more 1989 if they tried. The original game actually beat Megami Tensei to the punch when it came to using real-world settings as dungeons. So there's quite a bit of, oh, that's neat, but then the map design is awful. There's not a whole lot to do other than get your levels and bullets so that you can pass the next section, and then you always have to watch out for those bugs. Shiryou Sensen is a game where I can see the potential in it. It just didn't live up to it.